her about, hey, what's your name? What's going on? What are you thinking? That type of stuff. That's what you're doing now. That's what you hunt. That's what you're doing now. You are the talking point that you've been through all this crap and you've been through all these situations. And now you know what it feels like. And now you're the one that's helping. You're the one that's putting the knee down and talking to the men that have gotten their asses kicked for all of these years.
Man.
And now you're the one building one another up. So don't think that I'm the only one who's done something like that. You're doing the exact same thing right now, talking into this screen.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. I mean, because unfortunately, you know, wisdom comes with pain. Wisdom comes with despair.
Yes,
Wisdom. You have to, you know, because how can we relate with people that have been on that? And they think they're alone. That's the problem with people, right? We disconnect from the world, from our the people we love, because we feel like you'll never understand. They don't want to understand us, so we disconnect from that. You know what I'm saying? Our lives are all interconnected. So I appreciate you saying that, because it does mean a lot, man. I mean, I've had certain people in my life. Like I said, I've never had those thoughts, whatever, but I've had certain people in my life throughout. I'm gonna say one, Nate Mylan. You remember Nate?
Yeah. Oh, of course.
After Derek, that night, I was still on shift. He called me and said, I heard what happened. You know, I'm coming in, whatever. And he comes in. He was on leave. He was supposed to be there. That's his biggest thing about that, too. He wishes he could have been there.
Right.
But like he came in and sat in the day room. You know how the ghosts, we had all those ghost stories at the
of course.
But I was sitting in the day room and he sat there all night, and me and him just talking, dude, like going through what he's gone through, the situations he's gone through, and things he's seen, because he was a firefighter prior, you know, civilian side. And he was there during Hurricane Katrina, so he had a lot of stuff to deal with that. And I'm waiting for him to call me up. Actually, I'm really just trying to call and talk to his daughter Abigail. She's my number one fan right now from his family. So, but yeah, like he was there for me when the amount of numbness that you probably felt walking in your home after your wife took the kids,
right,
was surmountable to the amount of numbness I felt after getting that call saying he passed.
Right.
You know, like I've seen a lot of trauma up to that point. You know, Iraq, mass casualties, you know, constant, you know, GSWs, gunshot wounds, you know, people getting blown up, whatever. Like it was a daily thing. But like that was personal. That was so close. So I could only imagine.
That was one of ours.
Yeah. He was a good, but so kind of like steering back towards, you know, how you felt after your wife had taken the kids, you come back. I had this question, right? Did you have any self-reflection during your journey through the pain of what had just transpired with your wife?
You mean did I kind of blame myself? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we all do it. We all do it.
Yeah, definitely. And still to this day, I blame myself mostly for my kids, not for my ex-wife, because she's gone and now I'm reestablished in a great relationship. So I'm not worried about that situation, but when it comes to my kids and stuff like that, dude, well, you know, I say that, man, not just in my life and my home, but even at work, even in the fire academy or fire department and fire academy, when I worked there and all the different types of stuff, man, I was a bonehead. I did a lot of stuff that I wasn't proud of, or that I kind of did that was stupid. And within my relationship with her and with them being there, I made a lot of mistakes. Man. I did. There was one time We were talking about attempts. I made an attempt while my family was in the living room, and I actually went into the bedroom and tried to grab a pistol. And my ex-wife had followed me in, and her arm got slammed. I slammed the door, not thinking she was behind me, and I slammed the door, and it slammed on her arm, and she went down and stuff like that. I mean, there was a lot of stuff, and it was an accident. I didn't know that she was there, and it's not like I was forcefully trying to slam her arm in the door. But anyway, my kids were there. My kids saw this type of stuff. They saw these type of emotions that were coming out of me, and the bipolar. But of course, I got to say the bipolar, but I also got to say the alcoholism. I also got to say the ego. It's, we've talked about ego with this. We talked about so many different things, but the alcohol, man. If there's one thing that I can get across today to anybody else that is possibly having any issues, is alcohol a factor? If it is, pour it down the drain, get it out of there. It's not going to make anything better. It's not going to make any situations better. If you're thinking something of on the lines of suicide or that type of stuff, it's definitely not going to make that situation any better. We've talked about a little bit before. I had my third attempt. I killed a 12-pack of beer in 2 hours. Like, killed it.
You slammed it, yeah.
And for me, that was pretty intense. For anybody, I would think that would be pretty intense. But I had all these emotions that were going through my head. It was my mom's 13th anniversary from her death and her suicide. And I had all this stuff that was going on in my head. And here I am just guzzling beer at the same time. It just makes it worse. And I think if the beer had not been situated into that situation, I think that it would have had a completely different outcome, and I wouldn't have been trying to hang myself that night. And so there's so many things with this. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
But when you said that right there, that was your third attempt, you tried to hang yourself with the rope. That was after I called after that, right?
Right.
Me and you had a conversation that I don't think either one of us, it was one of those things. I think it was, and I know there's a testimony behind that. So do you want to kind of get into that testimony after that as well?
Well, are you talking about what happened that night and the phone call that came in, or you're talking about your phone call that came in?
I think for you, I think it's a bit of both. I think it was that.
Okay.
And then I had called, I don't even know how long after that had happened. I can't remember.
I think it was 2 days. So basically what happened is that within the 2 hours, I lived in a loft at the time. I had a really kick-ass loft. And I had made this makeshift noose, pardon me for saying that word, but I had made a makeshift noose, and I threw it up over the rafters in the loft and had it hanging down. And I finished my last beer, and I reached up, and I remember grabbing it, and I had it in my hands, and the phone rang at 2:00 in the morning. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is my phone ringing at 2 a.m.? And I picked it up, and it was a dear friend of mine named Nancy from Celebrate Recovery. I had been going to CR for a while after the divorce or after the separation happened and stuff like that. And I had gotten good support from there. And I answered the phone, and I said, what are you doing? And she said, I've seen some of your posts on Facebook, and it's really starting to scare me. What's going on with you? And I told her what was happening. And she said, get the hell out of there. Go. Well, I lived in downtown Bryan, Texas at the time. And it's a real nice area. You can walk around. It's 2:00 in the morning. Nobody's going to bother you, or at least at that time. And so I got out of the loft. I went for a walk, and I walked for probably 2 hours. And finally, when I came back, I just pushed the noose out of the way, went and because the beer had finally kicked in. So I just hit the bed and went to sleep. And I think it was 2 days later. I could be wrong, man. I think it was 2 days later that you called. And I remember, and it's the same thing as a few weeks ago when you called me. And I saw your name on there and I was like, Hunt. Like, who is Hunt? Like, what's going on? And I heard that, Nelson, what's up, brother? And I'm like, holy crap, this is Hunt. This is like Sergeant Hunt. This is like, holy crap. And that was kind of you were talking to me and you were like, hey, something's wrong. I can tell something's wrong with you. Something's going on. And I remember talking to you about the situation and you're like, man, I'm here for you. We've got other people who can be here for you. Tell me what you need. And I told you, I was like, at this time, I've taken the equipment down and all of that's gone and it's out of the house. And you asked me, I remember you asking me, do you have any means to do it again? And I said, no, I don't have any means to do it again. Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me to stay away from the beer. And you're like, drinking's not going to help you. And at that time, you were like, hey, drinking's not going to help you at this point. And it was a process. You had Nancy, then you had you calling, then you had me getting on. I had been on Match.com months. I mean, like, yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I had been on Match.com months before that. And I had dabbled on it and talked to a few people, but nothing. I hadn't really met anybody or anything like that. And I remember one day it was May 9th, 2019. I'll remember that date to the rest of my days. That I opened up Match and I just decided, I was like, you know what, this was like 10 days or it's like 20 days or something like that after the attempt. I'm not good with numbers, but I remember I said, I'm just going to go on it and see what's there just because I'm bored and I have nothing else to do and I have no alcohol to drink and stuff like that. So I opened it up and there was the face, dude, that I had been waiting to see my entire life. I had been waiting to see that face my entire life. And her name was Nally Charles Pierre, or Nally Fletcher, was before her divorce that she had been through as well. She had liked my posts prior to. So I was like, oh, okay, well, she's kind of interested. All right, that's fine. And we go through and we start talking. And now 5 years later, here we are. You know, everything God put into play was like, I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put Nancy here. I'm going to put Hunt here. And I always call you Hunt. I hope that's okay.
No, you're good. No, you're good, man.
I'm going to put Hunt here. I'm going to put Natalie here. I'm going to do this and do that. I'm going to put Sass here. I'm going to do everything has been a building block in every part of my life, man. And every part of your life, every part of anybody who's sitting here watching this thing right now. And they're probably sitting there saying, wow, I haven't thought about this, but this that happened yesterday is a building block for what was built off of the day before or something like that. Man. It's all, they call them God winks. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but no. I've heard them called God winks, where he winks and something just kind of happens and he just puts it in your plate. And it all, go ahead, please.
No, finish your thought, and then
That's okay. I'm good.
Okay. To put some reflection back into the question, and then where you kind of went from that journey, right? You attempted, then that lady Nancy had called you that night, that morning. A couple of days later, I had called you, and at that moment, right? I'm gonna pause it, right? But from that time that I had called you, I remember seeing something on Facebook. I was like, I haven't talked to this guy in a while. You know what I'm saying? I need to reach out to him, see what's going on, you know? Just don't seem right, you know? And that's when I wrote you. We kind of got into it. And one of the things that we needed to do that we never did was get into that Derek thing, man, because what we did that most people need to understand that deal with trauma, especially like extreme trauma, when it's personal, when it's really, really close, is you need to learn to share it, right? Like to share that burden of the pain of what it is that we're going through. What we did was we had Nelson Thomas, who had his perspective and how he was dealing with it. We had everybody else that had their perspectives and how they were doing it, how I was dealing with it, you know, but we were never able to, me and you were never able to collectively come together to share in the journey of what we went through.
Right.
And it took, I think it was 8 or 9 years later when we had that conversation. And I remember saying, man, I'm sorry, man, you should have been one of the first persons I should have really talked to about how you were doing, because you never know what somebody else is going through and how they're going to react to trauma, you know, because I was so stuck in my own mind. I had my own marital issues, you know. I'm not going to get into that because my kids will probably see this. I'll tell them that when it's time, but you know, they're right now they're going to be told whatever they're going to be told by their mom. But I couldn't, you know, think to just be there with the people that were also affected. We were all just in our own little silos of pain. You know what I'm saying? Like just going down this tube of despair and drinking, because I was drinking too, man. I was getting into it. But when we finally had that conversation, man, and one of the things that we talked about were the decisions that we made and that weren't made, and how all that transcribed in our lives afterwards, because it impacted our families. Because, you know, unfortunately, I hate to say it, man, you know, he was gone, but what we couldn't do was move forward. Like we kept living in the past. We kept ruminating on the past. And that's where, you know, one of those questions I kind of had, right? And talking about suicide, trauma, pain, you know, a huge thing outside of alcohol and mental health issues. And I will put this in its own category, is ruminating on that suffering, ruminating on what caused us the issue. You know, my wife left me, or this and that. And I kept doing that, you know, and drinking always helps you to remember all that crazy stuff and bring all that stuff back. But yeah, that ruminating thing was one of those things, man. And it was such a great burden off my shoulder to talk to you. And we had that conversation. I assume you felt the same way, but we had that.
I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't remember a whole lot of that conversation after when we talked about Derek the first time, after the attempt. I don't remember a whole lot from that conversation. And so I don't remember what we discussed then. But when you and I talked a few probably weeks ago, when I was in a hotel at my residency for school and all that other type of stuff, and we talked about that was the conversation of Derek that I really needed. And now we're talking 13 years later.
Yeah.
That we're having that conversation. So you're right. The conversation needed to happen and it needed to go on. I will say this about Derek, and I'll say this about the aftermath and the alcohol and all that other type of stuff. I am blessed to this day that we were in Japan and in Okinawa that did not have guns.
Yeah, no, I get it.